Good morning. How's everybody feeling? You feeling pretty good? Some of you look like you might be feeling a little rough around the edges. Not sure if that's true or not. But welcome to service here with us. Really glad everyone is able to come. We have been talking about the rough edges of Jesus, or the rough edges of God. And we've talked about what is it that makes us angry? What is it that makes us upset? Are the things that make us upset the things that should make us upset? Or more often than not, do things that really shouldn't bother us so much, are those the things that often bother us the most? I don't know if you've ever overreacted to something. Oddly enough, I got this slide ready, obviously much earlier than yesterday, but this morning, as I'm grabbing my stuff, I stubbed my toe. And in my defense, my toes are very sensitive. But this was basically me in cartoon form right here, grabbing my foot like, oh, no. And you get upset and you get angry because you hurt yourself, or you get angry because, have you ever walked into a door? And then you curse that door? Right? You're like, dumb door. What's that door doing? And like maybe you slammed the door, like the door did something wrong to you, like the door shifted just to hit you. No, it was you. You hit the door. You walked right into it. Or you go to close the automatic thing on your trunk, and you don't pay attention. You turn back around and you hit your head on the trunk. We do things to ourselves, and we get mad at the thing when the thing had nothing to do with it. There's a story in the life of Jesus where it looks like he had a I just stubbed my toe moment, where he curses something that it's not its fault. We'll look at the story, but he curses a tree. A tree. You can only imagine how it must have looked as the disciples are watching Jesus curse a tree. It probably reminded them of when they stubbed their toe and they cursed the rock they stubbed their toe on, or the chair. And here's Jesus cursing a tree, and it happens at a very odd time. It happens at a time when Jesus has just had what we call the triumphal entry. Do you know what they called it? Nothing. We call it Palm Sunday. They called it Sunday. Not even that, actually. Right? It was just a day of the week, and Jesus is coming into Jerusalem, and everyone is lined up because a lot of people believe that he is the one that God has sent to save them from Rome. He was going to free them, liberate them. They're celebrating. They're throwing down palm branches as he comes in riding on a donkey, and everyone is just celebrating, and they are so happy. And it seems like this is the moment where everything's going to turn around. Nothing but good vibes from here on out. And of course, if you know the Bible story, this is the beginning of the march to Calvary. This is the beginning of Jesus' walk, his 1-week journey to the cross. And it starts with a celebration, but right after that celebration, we have this story about a fig tree and a temple. Now, depending on which gospel you are reading, this story will look a little different. In some stories or some accounts, Jesus curses a tree, and the curse he pronounces happens immediately, right there on the spot. And then he goes to a temple. In this story, he curses a tree. Nothing happens just yet. He goes to the temple, and then as they're coming back, they see something that had happened to the tree. But when you read the story, it should make you ask all sorts of questions. You should read the story and wonder, why is Jesus acting like me when I've stubbed my toe? Because that is kind of how it looks. It says the next day, this is after the celebration, after the palm branches have been laid down. The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree and leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. So Jesus and his disciples are walking around. They're about a 2-mile journey from Bethany back to Jerusalem. Jesus wakes up. He's hungry. He sees a fig tree, and he thinks, oh, great. Free breakfast, right? I'm going to pick some figs from this fig tree. I'm going to eat as we go on our way. When he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. This is an important detail. It's not supposed to have any figs yet. It's not the season for figs. It's just now starting to bud. It has all the leaves, but it has no fruit. And Jesus does what any normal person would do at this moment when you're hangry. Then he said to the tree, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard him say it. This is odd. Jesus knows it's not fig season. He knows before he ever puts his hand in the tree, there are no figs. He doesn't know this because of his divine nature. He knows it because it's not fig season. Everybody knew. The disciples probably watched him and thought, what is he doing? He said he's hungry. It's not fig season. There are no figs on that tree. And lo and behold, there aren't any figs on the tree. And then Jesus curses the tree. In other versions of the story, they'll say he caused the tree to wither. He said, wither, and it did. Here he says, may no one ever eat fruit from you again. Seems a little harsh. Talk about rough around the edges. How many of you get a little upset or irritable when you're hungry? More hands than that, I bet. More hands than that. I get a little irritable, but I control myself perfectly. It's amazing what I do. No, we all get a little irritable when we're hungry. Is that what's going on here? Is Jesus just hangry? Is Jesus just, he's upset because he's hungry and there's no food? And he's like, this tree doesn't deserve to live. I will curse the tree. And he does. Why is Jesus so upset at a tree? Is he upset at that tree the same way you are at a chair when you hit your foot on it? Or when you walk into a door and you blame the door? Why is he blaming the tree? We'll get there. On reaching Jerusalem, so no fruit, they just keep on moving. Can't cry over spilled milk, just keep going. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. I'm just going to bring up this point because I'm not going to read this story multiple times in this sermon series. We're just going to do it here. Jesus driving out the money changers and sellers in the temple. There is only one version of this story where Jesus makes a whip. Did you know that? Only in the Gospel of John does Jesus fashion a whip. Not any of the other stories. It's just a nerd note. Do with it what you want, but there it is. He began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, not allowing anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. You might wonder, what are all these people doing there to begin with? Aren't the people supposed to bring their own animals to the temple and make the sacrifices there and do the offerings? Well, yeah, you can. But if you come from a really long ways away, it's really hard to bring a blemishless animal from one territory, cross the terrain, wild animals, and have it arrive in Jerusalem still without blemish. So they had a solution for this. The solution was, you bring your money, we'll exchange your money for temple money, then you can use that temple money to buy an animal that is flawless. That way you don't run the risk of damaging your sacrifice on the way. It was a solution to a problem, but there's something deeper happening here, because what is it that's driving Jesus to overthrow those solutions? A lot of people will say it was the money changers' fault. It's not quite their fault. They're a symptom of the problem. We'll get there in a second. He taught them and said, is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations? But you have made it a den of robbers. Do you have the suspicion that Jesus taught more than one verse? That he said a little bit more than what we have contained here in verse 17? Raise your hand if you think Jesus said more than what we have written here in verse 17. We do. He has to have said more than this. He's teaching them, and he focuses in on two passages of Scripture. One from Isaiah, one from Jeremiah. The one from Jeremiah is from Jeremiah chapter 7, and Jesus is using this passage that describes a temple that has gone wrong. A temple that is useless. A temple that's lost its way. It has no power. It has no effect. It has no positive influence on anyone's lives. It's just a dead temple. And yet everyone thought in the day of Jeremiah that because they had a temple, everything was great. Because God lives there. How do we know? Because it's a temple. God's on our side then because the temple's located with us. It doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter how we live. It doesn't matter how we treat those around us. The only thing that matters is we have a temple. And Jeremiah says this is supposed to be a place of prayer. This is not supposed to be some den of brigands or robbers. And Jeremiah calls them that because that's how they were treating each other. He doesn't say it without a purpose. That's how they treated one another. They were stealing from one another. They were being unjust toward one another. In fact, it's very possible that the money changers were not changing money as they should have been. The money changers might have been a bunch of Judases, diet Judases, just taking a little bit for themselves, ripping people off just a little bit. Maybe when they go to buy the animal, they're charging a little more for that animal than they should be. And Jesus says, people are supposed to come here and worship God, and you've turned it into a money-making scheme. This isn't about God anymore. You're robbing each other. What's wrong with you? People from all nations, this is Isaiah, people from all nations of the world are supposed to come to this place and find God, and all they found is you. So he turns over their table. He's a little upset. And not just because he's angry or hangry. He's upset because the people of God are not being the people of God. The leaders are not representing God as they should, and they're leading their people astray, and Jesus has had enough. And so, yes, in John, he forms a whip. It doesn't say he cracked anyone with it, but who knows? You don't usually make whips for no reason. By the way, do you know how long it takes to make a good whip? You don't, do you? I didn't either. Someone from last Sunday service said, I have a friend that makes whips for theatrical purposes, and it takes him about a week to make a really good whip. So you got to picture Jesus making a whip day after day, and the disciples wondering, what is he doing? Then he curses a tree, and like, what is he doing? And why is he bringing that whip into the temple? What's going on? They had abused and lost the call of God in their lives. And Jesus declares, so some people call this the temple cleansing. He's not really cleansing a temple. He's pronouncing judgment, a prophetic judgment on the temple. Made it a den of robbers. The chief priests and the teachers of the law heard this and began looking for a way to kill Jesus, for they feared him because the whole crowd was amazed at his teaching. It might not sound amazing to us, but this is amazing to them. They've never really heard this stuff before. Most people today and then, we just kind of do what we're told to do by the people in charge. That's what you do at work. A lot of times, go here and do that. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Right? I'm just doing what I'm told. Jesus is exposing a failure on the part of the leadership, and they've never really seen anything like this, especially in the temple, especially after all the rage that he expressed of flipping over tables and chasing people out and not letting people even cross from one side to another with an animal. Chief priests hear about it. He's disturbing our business. He's not disturbing God's business. He's disturbing their business. He's disturbing their business. It should have been God's business, their business, but it wasn't. And the crowd's amazed at his teaching. When evening came, Jesus and his disciples went out of the city. What do you think they're going to walk by? They're going to walk by a fig tree. In the morning, as they went along, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots. This poor fig tree. Unlike you, when you curse a door or a chair, nothing happens to that door or chair, just your toe hurts really bad. That's it. This tree did nothing wrong. Now it's withered from the roots. Peter remembered and said to Jesus, Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed has withered. Have faith in God, Jesus answered. Truly I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, I'm going to stop there. I want you to see a correlation between the tree and the temple. The tree is representative of the temple. It looks good on the outside. When you're coming down and heading into Jerusalem and you see the temple, it all looks really good, just like that fig tree. But once you get on the inside of that tree or the inside of that temple, there is no fruit. And we've said this before, God doesn't need churches full of people who have no fruit, who've forgotten why they are, who they are, and what they've been called to. He doesn't need that. You see, the main difference is the temple is supposed to be in season and out of season, always producing fruit. The temple doesn't have a cycle where sometimes it's on and sometimes it's off and sometimes the love is there and sometimes it's not, and that's just the way it works. There are no seasons in church. He curses the tree because he's cursing the temple. The tree withers because the temple will also wither. And when he says in the next verse, have faith in God, truly I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, what mountain? The mountain where the temple is. I have heard this passage preached so many times, and you know where it starts? It usually starts in verse 22 and 23. You can't start a sermon from this passage at verse 22. Because then you can't answer the question, which mountain? Jesus, what mountain are you talking about? I'm talking about the mountain where God is supposed to be expressed through his people to a world. The vision that Isaiah has for the temple is a vision where everyone comes. Other nations, Gentile nations, people are coming, people are flocking to God. Even the eunuchs are coming to God. And in that same passage, he says, I will give eunuchs a special name, a name better than son, a name better than daughter. They will have the best name of all. And if you remember right, eunuchs weren't even allowed in the temple. They weren't even allowed to come in. Remember Acts, the Ethiopian eunuch who said, what's stopping me from being baptized? Well, at that point in history, the point that you're a eunuch is what's stopping you from being baptized because you're not allowed in. You have a defect. But Isaiah says, no, there's a time coming when all nations and all people, even eunuchs, are going to come. And they're going to come into the temple and they're going to worship God. But it can't be that temple, that mountain. Because that temple and that mountain is not representing God. Truly I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, go, throw yourself into the sea, and does not doubt in their heart, but believes that what they say will happen, it will be done for them. I don't know if you've ever felt a sense of helpless frustration at our particular religious predicament. Where you look around, there's churches on every corner, and we disagree on some little thing, and we split and we divide, we do this, and put a different name on our door. They have this, and they clap, we don't clap. They support this, we don't support that. They have instruments, you name it. I don't know if you've ever felt a particular frustration and thought, what can be done about this mess? That's I feel that all the time. Jesus says if God can renew his faith in the people in his day, he can do it again. Somehow it will work, don't doubt. This is for me. Maybe it's not for any of you, but this is for me. Don't doubt that God can work together for the good. Because as divided as we are, I truly believe that the large majority of us are just trying to live faithful lives to God. So don't feel hopeless. If you're a disciple, you have to feel hopeless at this point. Because Jesus is gone, and he's cursed a temple, and they come out as evidence. They say, wow, if he can curse the tree, he can curse that. Now what do we do? And he says, have faith in God. That's what you do. God can fix this. God can fix this, and God can fix us. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it'll be yours. And when you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them, so that your Father in heaven may forgive you your sins. I'm leaving these verses in not because they pertain specifically to the rough around the edges, but it's part of the text, and I think we need to read it. Jesus says, as we're praying for that religious renewal, as we're praying for something to stir in the hearts of humanity and draw towards God, don't forget that you're called to be a person of forgiveness. Why? Because God is a God of forgiveness. And if we're not going to be forgiving of others, then our tree has no fruit. We're just looking good on the outside. Oh, look how well they dress for church. Who cares how well you dress for church? I don't. I only wear shirts like this for you. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's not the leaves that are important. It's whether or not there's fruit there. That's what's important. Do you love the people around you? Do you care for those who are around you and are, I don't even remember if it was Wednesday night class or Sunday morning class. It's all mixed up at this point. But at some point, somewhere recently, we were talking about elders and qualifications of elders. And one of the criteria of qualifying as an elder is for people who are selecting elders to go and talk to people in the community where you live. Not church people. Not people who get to see you with all your leaves on. Yeah. Go talk to the people where you work. Go talk to the people in your community, your neighbors, and ask them, what type of person is so-and-so? And if everybody at church loves you, but everybody in your community doesn't think very highly of you, you put on a lot of leaves for church. Oh, a lot of leaves. And as soon as you get home, you take off your Sunday best. We're supposed to be a people that the world can look at and say, that's the right way. None of us are perfect, none of us. That's why we need to forgive each other. We're forgiven when we've done something wrong. And we forgive others when they've done something wrong. And God forgives us because we've done something wrong. In fact, the entire temple sacrificial system was based on the fact that people don't do things right. The whole thing is a recognition of the fact that none of us are doing it right. So be merciful with each other. Love each other. Forgive each other. That's what we've been called to do. So what made Jesus so angry? What made him angry wasn't that tree didn't have any figs. That was just an illustration. What made him angry is when he looks into the fig tree of Israel, fig tree of the temple, a place where fruit is supposed to be all year long, there wasn't any. And there's supposed to be. If you have a tree that produces no fruit all year long, you'll starve. Remember when Jesus says, look, they're like sheep without a shepherd. They had a figless tree. And they needed someone to correct course. What makes Jesus angry is when he sees injustices happening against people who are seeking after God, and someone's always blocking the door. That would be people like me, religious leaders, who stand in front of the door and say, you can't come in. We think we're on the inside, but actually we're on the outside too. What makes you angry? I don't like being angry. We've already talked about this. I don't like how I feel. I don't like how I act. There's nothing about me being angry that I really enjoy. But there should be some things that happen that upset me, that cause me to have a righteous reaction. Are the things that make you mad the things that make Jesus mad? Or are you a little bit more like me sometimes? You just get mad at stuff that really doesn't matter. As we're trying to become more like Jesus and be more in the form and person of Jesus in our lives, this is one of the characteristics that we can't ignore, is looking at the things that made Jesus angry. We'll look again at another story that I typically preach, but through rose-colored lenses next week. This one's going to have a little harsher tone. It really won't, but we'll focus more on another portion of the story that I often leave to the side. If you want to know what that story is, you already know. You got to come next week. If you are in 8th grade or higher, you can go back and you can follow John to the Youth 1050 class.